So, let's look into what are the fundamental building blocks of a legal and enforceable contract by law. So, the first element that we will look into is called mutual assent. So, mutual assent means an offer and an acceptance. In other words, it's an offer made by an offeror and an acceptance by the offeree. So if you look at this diagram, this kind of highlights what we mean when we talk about offer and acceptance. So on the left side, you have the offeror. He shows intent to enter into a contract. He makes a definite offer and communicates that offer to the offeree. An example would be, I'll pay you $50 an hour to edit my book on Mesoamerican sewing techniques. So there's the offer. It shows that he intends to enter into a contract. He makes a definite term. He says how much he'll pay per hour, and he also says what the other side needs to do for him to actually pay the $50 an hour. In this case, editing his book on Mesoamerican sewing techniques. That's the offer. So, in order for a valid contract, then once the offer is communicated to the offeree needs to show intent to accept that offer, communicates the intent to accept by the proper means, and states an acceptance that mirrors the terms of the offer. In this case, all the offeree would need to say is, I will take the editing job. It shows his intent, it communicates his intent, and it states an acceptance that mirrors the terms of the original offer. So let's look into this in more detail. So a contract is formed when a party accepts an offer. An offer is a statement or other communication by which the offeror grants the offeree the power to accept a condition and form a contract. As we went over before, an offer must be communicated to an offeree, be in a communication authorized by the offeror, indicate an objective intent to enter into a contract as determined in accordance with a reasonable person standard, and be sufficiently definite and certain. So these four characteristics are what must be there for a valid offer. And generally, if a person just says, I will do this if you do this, and does it in a way to another person, then that is an offer. Because if it's them themselves, the offeror, saying it, then clearly it's a communication authorized by them, and it would indicate an objective intent. For the other two characteristics of be communicated to an offeree, there's some instances in which it might be in a letter, the offer, it might be in an email, and sometimes it may not be definite and certain. So it could be, I'll give you a set amount of money if you do this, but maybe this. See, that wouldn't be definite or certain enough. It has to be something along the lines of, I will pay you $50 an hour if you do edit my textbooks by a certain time. It has to be sufficiently definite and certain. So that's what an offer is. So there are some trickier fact patterns that could implicate these more broad definitions of what an offer is. So, no specific manner of communication of the offer is required. An offer need not take any particular form. For example, nonverbal communication may be appropriate. So, what if I'm at a party and I take out a $100 bill, I show it to you, then I point to the bathroom or something. In that case, it could be argued, but that is a form of communication that may not actually state what I want, but based upon my actions and conduct and waiting for another person's response to that, that may constitute a nonverbal offer, although that is arguable. So, moving on. Invitations to negotiate and preliminary negotiations do not constitute an offer. So invitations to negotiate may come in the form of, are you interested in, I'll probably take. So these types of phrases are not necessarily the language of an offer, which must have a commitment and an intent to contract embedded within it. So if it's just invitations to flesh out what the terms of the deal are, that's not a definite offer. Like in a CPA context, if the CPA were meeting with a potential client and the CPA is like, are you interested in like hiring me for this? Like that's not actually an offer. An offer would be, I will do your tax return if you pay me $100. That's sufficient and definite. So, what about an advertisement? So, an advertisement might have language that looks like an offer, but it's not actually a legal offer the way we define it. Instead, it's an invitation for anybody that sees that ad to submit offers to the ad placer. So it's not an offer, but it's an invitation to others to submit their offer. That's actually what an advertisement is. There is a special class of advertisements that could constitute an offer if it uses clear, definite, and explicit language that leaves nothing open for negotiations. And I might add, an advertisement that would fall under this exception would need to have a definite communicated means of acceptance. So an example of an advertisement that is an offer could be, I have 5 coats for sale at $500 each. The first 5 people that contact me will get the $500 deal. In that case, that is an offer that's in the form of an advertisement because it gives clear, definite, and explicit means to accept that essentially $500 for a coat. And it also designates specifically who can accept that advertisement offer, which would be the first 5 people. So lastly, a contract must be reasonably definite as to material terms and clearly state the rights and duties of the parties. So essential terms include the names of the parties, the subject matter involved, the price and quantity, and the time and place of performance. If you recall from last class, we talked about an engagement letter. An engagement letter would have all 4 of these material terms within it. So refer back to the previous class about engagement letters, because that's a scenario that is very important for CPAs and hits at the crux of what this subject matter is about. All right, so how long is an offer valid for? So the termination of an offer occurs from these 6 scenarios. So the first would be the lapse of time. If no time is stated in the offer terminates after a reasonable period. Pretty self-explanatory. Second, death or incompetence. So if either the offeror or the offeree dies or becomes mentally handicapped or otherwise does not show up for a specific length of time, then the termination of the offer occurs. Next, we have destruction or loss of the specific subject matter also terminates an offer. If I offer to sell you a coat, but then the coat gets destroyed, then my offer to sell you the coat is terminated. Next, illegality. So if a proposed contract or performance involves illegal conduct or criminal conduct, that also terminates the offer. In this case, it would mean the offer was not valid in the first place. Next, and this is a common scenario, the last 2, is revocation. The offeror may revoke an offer at any time prior to acceptance, but that revocation must be communicated to the offeree prior to the offeree's acceptance, and as soon as the offeree hears that communication, then the offer is revoked. Next, we have rejection. Also terminates an offer. Because the reason why is because an offer is only valid for a specific time to a specific person about specific terms. So if I ask, let's say, my sister if she wants to buy my car for $500 and she says, no, I don't want to buy that car, then there's no more offer on the table. She effectively rejected my offer because it implied that she didn't want to accept it, and therefore we move on. I might actually then give a different offer. Will you buy my car for $50? Like, I might change the price. That would create a new offer, which gives her the power to accept it and the power to reject it. So it's always a give and take. It's always these micro scenarios where an offer is extended. We'll see if it's ever terminated while it's in flux of like waiting to be answered. Then if it's rejected, or if the person that made the offer revokes it, then that's when the offer terminates. So this is very important for the termination of an offer. So let's look at the flip side of it, the acceptance part of mutual assent. So acceptance is the offeree's exclusive power, but they're never obligated, either the offeree or the offeror, until the acceptance occurs. Think of the acceptance as the final like zipper, or the final tying of the bow on like the present of offer and acceptance. And that's an acceptance is only within the power of the person that the offer is directed toward. So an acceptance must relate to the terms of the offer and be positive, unequivocal, and unconditional. The acceptance may not vary the offer in any way. So if I say, will you, I'm the offeror in this case. If you clean my car by next Saturday, I will give you $500. The person that I direct it to must say, yes, I will do that. I will clean your car for $500. If the person that I communicate that offer to says, I will clean your car for $400, I just changed the terms of the offer, which actually is not a conditional acceptance that we would call it. That's actually a new offer, and that's not an acceptance at all. We call this the mirror image rule. The acceptance must accept the offer in every material way and cannot have extra conditions onto it. So that's called the mirror image rule, and it's very, very important, or else there's no legal contract. So acceptance must be communicated to the offeror by any words or actions that a reasonable person would understand as an acceptance. And if an offeror specifies a means of acceptance, it must be used. So this just simply means that the person that has the power to accept the offer has to communicate it directly to the person that made the offer in the first place. That's very important. Next, we have something called the mailbox rule. So the offer may state that acceptance is effective on receipt, which means as soon as the person that made the offer and they receive a communication that the offer is accepted, then that's when the contract is formed. If it does not, the law actually presumes something that we call the mailbox rule. So the mailbox rule is mostly applicable in sales of goods contracts, in which there's a lot of communication going back and forth. And it simply just means that under the rule, as soon as that acceptance, I accept your order to buy, etc., is mailed, then the law presumes that a contract is formed at the moment that the offeree puts that acceptance letter into the mail. Okay? So it essentially requires that the offeree used an authorized means of acceptance that the offeror gave, and the offer was not revoked or terminated in any way. So the offer is still open. The acceptance is effective even if the offeror attempts to revoke it while that acceptance letter is going on and happening within is in transit to be accepted or to be given to the person that actually did the offer. So following a prior dispatch of a rejection, the acceptance is only effective if the offeror receives that before receipt of the rejection. So that's an important designation. So just take a look at that.